today's episode, we have Barrister Khadija Yasmin Bokhari, who is an advocate of High Courts of Pakistan with 10 years of experience in litigation and legal research. इन्होंने बहुत से औरतों के जो लीगल मसले होते हैं उसको आवाज़ उठाई, उन पर काम किया है एंड प्रेजेंटली शी सर्विंग एज द डायरेक्टर लिटिगेशन एंड एडवोकेसी एट मुसावी. थैंक यू सो मच खदीजा फॉर जॉइनिंग अस टुडे.
थैंक यू फॉर हैविंग मी.
सो खदीजा, सबसे पहला तो आपसे क्वेश्चन ये है कि व्हाट मेड यू थिंक कि लॉयर बनना है मैंने? Like, was there any specific point? Because इस प्रोफेशन को थोड़ा सा स्टीरियोटाइप भी किया जाता है. So why do you think that? Was there any specific moment that you thought कि oh, now this is my path and this is where I have to move forward?
So I think there were a combination of factors. कभी भी I think कोई एक defining moment नहीं था. I think my journey has been a bit of mix of different moments. But I think it started off with political exposure at home. Because my father served as a senator, and from that, at very early on, I realized the, close nexus between law and politics, especially Pakistan. Mein aapko pata hai, with all the martial coups and then the, judiciary, then coming in to maybe also give them legitimacy and law being used in multiple ways. So there was a great nexus between the two, and I wanted to study more about, that intersectionality. तो वो एक वजह थी जिसमें मैं फिर मैंने सोचा कि मैं ए लेवल्स में लॉ लेती हूँ. तो ए लेवल्स में मैंने पहले लॉ सीखा, तो उसमें बहुत बेसिक लेवल का लॉ था, लेकिन आई गॉट टू अंडरस्टैंड अ बिट मोर कि दिस इज़ फन, इट्स इज़ नॉट लाइक अ बोरिंग सब्जेक्ट और एनीथिंग, एंड इट्स वेरी रेलिवेंट. फिर उसके बाद व्हेन आई परस्यूड माई बैचलर्स इन लॉ LLB, तो वहाँ पे आई थिंक व्हाट आई वुड से वाज द डिफाइनिंग मोमेंट वहाँ पे वाज आई जॉइंड डिबेट्स. And when I joined debates, then I discovered the litigator in me. And I realized, I would want to do this. And I think I have the ability to, pursue this as a proper legal profession. Because जब मैंने LLB शुरू किया था, even at that time, I wasn't entirely sure कि मैंने lawyer बनना है. At that time, you're like, अच्छा ठीक है, LLB कर लिया. There are so many routes that you can go to. Law is such a profession जिसमें आप multiple avenues explore कर सकते हैं. You can, go into public policy at a later time, governance. So a lot of people in our class were just doing LLB for CSS. So there were many avenues. But I think when I completed my degree, I was very, very sure I wanted to do this. And I think during, different conversations and with lecturers and also colleagues, I realized something interesting about law. And it comes back to my conversation with my father and overall understanding the political system. Politicians make the law, right? The judiciary is supposed to interpret that law. And then, it has a huge role in how it's going to be implemented. So I thought, actually, the real power then technically goes to the judiciary, because they're the ones that really are saying to you what is law, even when the parliamentarians have told you that this is the law, right? So then I did a deep dive and I said, well, who's telling the judges how to interpret the law? And I was like, actually, that's lawyers. So then I realized, the legal profession and law can really help me and, understand deeper about the system, but also really allow for, a way in which, I can help judges understand and interpret the law in the rights-based manner. And also in a way that it's supposed to be understood in its true spirit. So that was one of my motivations. I mean, a combination of them. And I really wanted to, continue with that journey to also see how political decision-making and social change, also comes about through legal principles.
So also, like, you said that you were very interested in what basically the law is. So did you find any stereotype when you joined, like, the law field?
So in the very beginning, I went to do my bar, and I came back, and I, when I came back, I often tell this to younger people now, that I had so much energy that I felt like, the world will burst with the amount of energy that I had. I had motivation that I'm going to make a change, do this and everything. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a stereotype, but I do think that, law firms here, they're not very encouraging generally. for young lawyers. And I think women in particular, they're not looked at, as the breadwinners, and, they're not, उस तरह से उनका focus ज़्यादा होता है कि अच्छा इन्होंने तो 2-3-4 साल काम करना है, maybe this is pocket money, etc. on the side. So I feel like those kind of, in not, I would say environment, but is tarah ki comments here and there you do see, and they are a bit discouraging. And overall, I feel like with young people, they'll just come back and tell you कि आपके 3 साल तो कहीं नहीं गए. 3 साल के बाद जाके आपको पता चलेगा लीगल प्रोफेशन में कि कुछ करना है या कोई काम है. And I think to somebody who has so much to contribute to, या to somebody who has so much energy, ये कहना is like really disappointing. तो आप उसको, it's not exactly stereotype in this particular sense, but yes, stereotype in the sense that आपके लिए तो it's not really, फिर शादी हो जाएगी, फिर छोड़ के चले जाना है. A lot of women, they drop out once they get married. So there's this impression that I felt, and especially I talked to my colleagues, that they also felt that there is overall this impression with women that this is not something that they really need, or they that they really want to do. It's just kind of something on the side. Of course, it's not the case for everywhere, but this is some of the stuff that I did also see with myself and some colleagues. But you have to fight. You have to fight with yourself first and foremost, because you ekdam se get discouraged, and you're like, I want to do something, and I remember what I felt when I came back to Pakistan, and I thought that I will make a change. So I'm going to continue with that journey, and you have to prove people wrong. And I think that during this course of my legal profession, the number of years it's been very rewarding as well, in the kind of impact and change that has come about when I was able to get rid of that mindset internally as well. This is just all noise, background noise. You have to keep going forward. You have to keep moving in the right direction. But yeah, there are challenges. I would not deny that. It's not a rosy road ahead entirely, but not to also discourage people, because I think there's enough in the system for you to be able to fight and also achieve.
Thank you, Khadija. When I was researching, I saw that you've also took up the issue of the married women not being able to get their passports without adding their husband's name to it. So how did that started? What was the main issue when you felt like there's need to do something about it, and how did that lead up?
Yes, so that actually started with a very personal journey of getting married, and then going to Nadra to get my marital status updated and to get my marriage registered, essentially. And at that time, I had known that Nadra no longer has a policy that you need to keep your father's name in the second column of the CNIC. This is not the surname. This is the column which says wife of or daughter of in your CNIC. So I told them I wanted to retain my father's name and in the second column of the CNIC, and they were fine with that, and I got my CNIC made post my marriage, after my marriage has been registered. Now, a couple of months down, I had to get my passport renewed, and there I was informed when I was renewing the application process that I needed to go back and change my CNIC back to my husband's name. To make it on my husband's name, and then I can apply for my passport. So I was not eligible to even apply for the passport without having a CNIC with my husband's name. And I did ask with, the passport authority that where is this written? Like, why do I need a CNIC with a husband name? And they said, no, this is just our policy, etc. And of course, the lawyer in me. And I think this is exactly what law does, right? It really empowers you, it encourages you, and it gives you that courage. You don't feel fear suddenly when somebody tells you this is not possible. You're like, how not? And so basically, I said to them that, show me which rule or policy or law or regulation or SOP with all, whatever it is that you think doesn't allow me. And they had nothing. They said, no, we have nothing. So anyway, it's a long way of explaining the story, but it's an important issue.
Yes.
But I went back to Nadra then, and I said that, look, they didn't allow me to make my passport on your validly issued CNIC. And they said, well, I'm so sorry. We don't know why Passport Authority is doing this. We at Nadra have given women this right because we want to create ease and convenience, and we understand there are many problems when women have to change their documents, and a lot of women have to travel for education purposes, and so we really did a rights-based thing. So I don't know why Passport Authority is not agreeing, because they should be listening to us. They should be listening to Nadra, because Nadra determines legal identity. However, back and forth, nothing happened. So eventually, I decided to file a public interest litigation in September 2023. So my passport expired. A couple of months, I tried doing some understanding of what was the issue. And then when I felt that this was a dead end, I filed that in the Lahore High Court. And then it was a struggle. Honestly, it was a struggle. Like, imagine I understand the law. I'm, well aware there is no policy, etc. Even then, my case took at least 2 years for it to be decided, in the Lahore High Court. And even after that decision, which came earlier this year in February 2025, it's been 7 months since. The court had given 6 months compliance to the Ministry of Interior and the DG passports to make sure that women have their legal identity. So essentially, I won the case in February after 2 years. But even after that, I waited for the 6 months period that they would, comply with the order. They didn't comply with the order. And then, unfortunately, it's the same situation that you still have to go and change your CNIC first to your husband's name, and then come to the passport for renewal. And the passport will also be printed on your husband's name. So unfortunately, the system here is that you have to just keep fighting, right? So even when I've won the case, and the court has recognized that women have the right to choose their legal identity in whether they want to keep their father's name or their husband's name, both on their CNIC and their passport, then, I don't know why the court's order is not being complied with. But we see this, right? We see this oftentimes that we have a number of decisions, but actually there isn't enough implementation of those decisions. But of course, the fight continues, and I will take it till the end. But this is how it came about. From a personal experience, I got to know, and then I used the law because I'm a lawyer. In fact, very interestingly, I wanted to mention that my husband is also a lawyer. And I said that I wanted him to be my lawyer in this particular case, and I'm the petitioner. So that was also like, we both are advocating for this cause, and it's extremely important because you see, at the end of the day, Ministry of Interior is governing both, is in charge of both Nadra and the Passport Authority. So it's under one ministry. But whereas Nadra allows you to make, your CNIC with your father's name retained, Passport doesn't. So it's almost like, it's like I say this, and I've said this before, but basically the system is saying that, or Passport Authority is saying that if you want to remain within the country, then you can be daughter of. But if you want to travel, you immediately have to become wife of.
Oh,
That's
weird.
Which is rather
Not
weird.
making sense,
Yeah.
actually.
And their policies need to be aligned, but unfortunately, they're not aligned. And women, in fact, in some ways, if they're going to avail an opportunity, they're technically being trapped,
Yes,
I would
they
say, because they don't know that this is what's ahead. Another passport legal battle.
Yes.
Also more like, for me, it's like there's no link between the passport office and Nadra, like being under the same ministry. Yeah,
there's,
so that's
no
like
regulation,
quite.
exactly.
Also, like you have worked on the Nikkah Nama, right? The creating awareness about it. So Nikkah Nama एक ऐसा document है जो I feel like ख़वातीन को उस तरह पता नहीं होता. Like I personally have experienced, like during the Nikkah process, like they cut out pages, they don't even read it. The brides, exactly, they don't even know what's inside it. So why do you think this particular issue needs a lot of awareness, and what were the gaps that you found out?
Yeah, so we've had a lot of work at Musawi on Nikkah Nama and awareness raising for women for this particular important piece of document, because this is where your legal rights emanate from. And oftentimes आपको पता है कब हम निकाह नामा पढ़ते हैं, हम पढ़ते हैं जब वो साइनिंग के टाइम पे जब निकाह सेरेमनी हो रही होती है. So unfortunately this is the tradition or this is just the norm that हमारी लिस्ट पे सारी चीज़ें होती हैं, from what you want to wear to खाने का मेन्यू क्या है to guest list. So every single thing is down to the perfect details, but unfortunately जो आपका legal document है वो नहीं है. So we realized that I think this is a huge contribution that I would say that our organization also has in this space, because before we started advocacy in this, there was very little conversation about this document. Family law के ऊपर आप conversations generally थी, but very specific conversation about the columns of the Nikkah Nama, what columns are being crossed out, why are they being crossed out, what are those rights, that I think we were able to spread across Pakistan, this conversation with government and different stakeholders across the board and with partners. But what we found really was that it's ultimately coming down to a lack of awareness. They don't think that this is a document that they need to read. They don't understand it. And there's a lot of family involved, which, is honestly oftentimes not even looking at the Nikkah Nama themselves till the very end as well. Yes. So, and there are some provincial differences, Punjab differences from Sindh, others that we've also documented. But the crossing out of the columns of the Nikkah Nama, we actually did a study on this with a number of around 1,100 Nikkah Namas, and found out majority of them had been crossed out. Yeah. And I just want to, through this platform, share with the audience that there is a specific law that says that you cannot cross out any columns in the Nikkah Nama. It is in the family, Muslim family law ordinance. It's there. But unfortunately, nobody knows. And there is actually an imprisonment and a fine as well for the Nikkah registrar if any such columns are crossed out. But we have not seen a single prosecution to this date, despite, the plethora of Nikkah Namas that are crossed out.
So Khadija, you mentioned अभी के निकाह नामा के अंदर कुछ जो है वो कॉलम्स कट आउट होते हैं, लाइक वो आते ही कट आउट हो गए हैं, तो मतलब what are those important columns? क्यों वो कट करके आते हैं? They're not important?
So oftentimes the columns of the Nikkah Nama that are cut out are contained in the second page of the Nikkah Nama. Nikkah Nama consists of 2 pages. In the second page, it's basically where a lot of the rights are. So उसके ऊपर पूरा एक blank column सारी या तो blank छोड़ जाते हैं या उसको काटा जाता है. So what they are is in particular column number 18. So उसमें क्या है, the women has been given the delegated right to divorce by the husband. So this is a question that is asked, and oftentimes it's just crossed out. Neither does it get answered in yes or no. It's just crossed out कि हमने इसके ऊपर बात भी नहीं करनी. And this is a very fundamental, important right, because if women are given the right to divorce in the same manner as men, then they don't have to go through the process of seeking khula or going through the courts. They can easily also, go to the union council, should any such reason arise, of course. So I think it's creating that equality in the processes of divorce that column number 18 does. And it asks the man, do you give this right? Okay. So if the man does not want to give this right, then he can say no. But you should not cross out any columns of the Nikkah Nama. But unfortunately, they're crossed out. Similarly, columns such as special conditions, if any, in the Nikkah Nama, which is column number 17, maintenance-related columns are also crossed out. Not considered important and or left blank. And again, like I mentioned, there is a specific law that states that you cannot cross out any columns of the Nikkah Nama. It's a criminal offense. But unfortunately, because of the lack of awareness, we're not really going around, enforcing it.
Fair. Acha, you also worked now as a director, litigation and advocacy at Musawi. So could you tell us about what Musawi is and how did that come up?
What was the journey where you started?
Yeah, so Musawi basically stands for equality. It comes from the word musawat, and it stands for equality. And that's the kind of, spirit with which we work across the board in different programs. We primarily work with marginalized groups. So that be women, children, transgender persons with disability, statelessness, legal identity is a huge area of focus for us. And what we try to do is that we want to create legal empowerment, do advocacy, but also training programs that we organize, and just overall understanding how we can empower these marginalized groups. So the way it came about was that we were a select few individuals, very rights-based, coming from different backgrounds. We joined hands in 2018 and we founded this organization. I joined a little later, even though I'm a founding member of Musawi, but I joined a bit later after I did some corporate law in the very beginning. I was more in IP and intellectual property and patents. But I always had this thing about human rights and constitutional law. So wherever I found anything that I could, do, even in the law firm I was working with, I would always be more interested in, that side. So then eventually I joined in 2021. And so it's been now 4 years. Yeah. And yeah, it's been great. And I think we're continuing to spread the message, not just on women's rights, but also we work a lot on child trafficking. We work with persons with disability. And overall, I think we're trying to use law to empower. But at the same time, we work both with, creating the demand in awareness raising and all, but also on the legal aid side, which is addressing that demand, right? With giving the actual legal aid. So you don't want to just create so many empowered people and then tell them that you can't actually get your rights, So we really focus on legal aid, and it's a huge component of the work that we do. We've helped countless women. We've set up a national helpline, 1413, with the National Commission of Human Rights, where women, free of cost, can, get legal aid on family law-related matters and others, domestic violence, child marriage, forced marriages. So that's an opportunity for them to be able to be given free legal aid, and that's something that we do. And we've had a lot of success stories, and sometimes it's like every person, it's one whole life. If you can change even one life, where you can, get someone out of an abusive relationship, get them redressal for, child marriage or domestic violence, then it's really creating a lot of impact. So at Musawi, we try to do this both by creating empowerment, but at the same time by meeting those needs through, legal aid and other rights-based work that we do.
So given that you have worked like immensely on all the platforms, right?
That's amazing.
So exactly. So what was the most the kind of project जो आपको लगा था कि इसने सबसे ज़्यादा impact किया? Like you have said, you worked with the Nadra and passport thing. You have worked on the Nikkah Nama. So with all these things, that which one would you pick? This has the most impact. Yeah, इससे मुझे बहुत satisfaction होती है. Something like.
बहुत मुश्किल है पिक करना, क्योंकि काम के अलावा मैं कहती हूँ कि जब आप कोई चेंज लाते हैं तो इसमें कोई बिग और स्मॉल नहीं होता, सब कुछ ही बिग होता है. क्योंकि अगर एक जिंदगी भी बदली है तो वो कितना बिग मूवमेंट है, राइट? आई गेट सो मेनी मैसेजेस फ्रॉम वुमेन when we're able to provide them with maintenance, और उनके बच्चों की नीड्स फुलफिल हो रही होती हैं, तो वो इतना खुशी का मोमेंट होता है जब आप कहते हो कि the law is working. Because बहुत सारे cases में आपको feeling आती है कि law is also not working. ना? जैसे I went through my own personal struggle of seeing that happen. And मैं तो, I think I could still withstand it. How many people can? So many women, so many of my colleagues have faced the same issue of passport with me. But they cannot go to the legal field and fight.
They haven't even, I think, thought about it.
Yeah, exactly. This can be done. They don't question.
But think about it. How many people have family support to do any of this? जब funny incident, but जब मैंने जियो के ऊपर इसके बारे में बोला तो उसमें आई रिमेंबर द गुड मॉर्निंग का शो था, उसमें आई रिमेंबर द होस्ट सेइंग कि देखिए इनके हस्बैंड भी इनके साथ हैं तो इनकी शादी ठीक चल रही है.
Exactly.
So otherwise people would say क्या तकलीफ है आपको इतना आपके हस्बैंड के नाम से,
why are you going through such
your
a struggle?
in-laws could be on your case as well, your own family could be, and in my case I have a huge support system. No one ever said anything to me and actually encouraged me to continue with this justice approach. But I'm saying how many women have that, right? So I think this is also important for me to be able to empower even a single woman is like a really impact oriented feeling jo bhi. But I think also, maybe if I can quote one instance very recently that comes to my mind is that we were actually struggling to provide legal identity to this child who we knew from various sources was going to be trafficked outside of the country. And I can't, for privacy details, mention. But basically, the issue was that she did not have her legal identity. And so the practice was that her CNIC would be made of age 18, even though she was 13 years old, to traffic her outside, right? For, like dance bars or whatever it is. And we really, mobilized and helped different authorities come together and understand how important her legal identity is. So just getting her a simple CNIC made, because there was a lot of documentation problems. So just getting a simple CNIC made in her specific case stopped her from being trafficked. So, it's like even those cases where you feel like, thankfully, you were able to achieve something. And I think similarly, forced marriages, wherever you were able to stop them, I think there was a case of a forced marriage where a woman was brought here to Pakistan and we were successfully able to send her back to her home country. So there are so many cases, but I think it's always sometimes there are moments, right, that you take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back and then again come forward. So this keeps happening, but I think there is enough in the system to keep continuing, and there's so much to do, honestly, that we should keep the fight going.
I think हमने काफी serious conversation कर लिया, काफी serious issues को touch कर लिया. So let's lighten up the mood a bit. हमने आपके लिए कुछ rapid fire questions तैयार किए हैं, लेकिन answer जल्दी करने हैं. Hopefully question जल्दी ना हो हमारे, लेकिन answer जल्दी.
So I'll start with it. Describe Pakistan in one word.
Beautiful.
So one stereotype about women in law that you would like to change.
It's not important for you.
Okay.
One law you would like to change tomorrow.
This one. This passport issue I would really like resolved.
What's tougher, like drafting laws or standing in courts?
Drafting laws.
Okay.
One word what would you say to young women? Like one word, ma'am.
Courage. Have courage.
So one book that you would recommend to every young woman they should read, like that inspires them.
Oh, this is very hard.
Jaldi.
Honestly, I am not idea because I don't know if it's about law or if it's just
general any book that you would like to recommend them.
I really
Okay, so we can skip that. Maybe.
Okay. Yeah. So coffee or chai when you're doing the late night prep?
Chai any day.
Okay, so what's your go-to stress buster when it's like a long day at court or something? What you would do?
Just deep breaths.
Okay,
fair. That's needed.
If not lawyer, what other profession would you choose?
Politics.
Oh,
that's interesting.
Oh, that's nice.
And it's still something I could choose.
Okay, one moment in court that you will never forget. Like one instant.
One instance in court.
That you're like, wait, what?
Yeah, very interesting. I can't think of anything immediately.
My questions are harder.
Yeah, your questions are hard. But I think it could have been something I remember about just, like you're constantly saying something and you don't exist.
Yeah, okay, get that. Yeah.
Like you're trying to speak to someone, like you're speaking. I think it was the reader and they don't make eye contact even and they just don't look at you. Yeah. Maybe something like that, yeah.
Okay, what's the most common misconception about female lawyers in Pakistan?
That they're not competent.
That's
a huge misconception.
So, one woman that you look up to, like as a role model or something.
Any women?
Yeah, any women. Just one.
There's so many, but immediately I can think of Benazir Bhutto.
Yes.
Okay. One change in everyday life you believe that can empower women.
Change that can empower women. I think just knowing more. Just read. Honestly, one other thing I would say to all the women who can write. Yes. Writing and sharing your experience is so important. Just don't think, oh, this happens. It happens to everyone. What am I going to achieve? Exactly. This mindset needs to go away because there is so much you don't realize is that you actually can achieve just if you raise your voice a little bit. So I think I would really encourage women to get rid of that feeling कि इससे तो कुछ नहीं होने वाला.
Okay, guys, lamba ho gaya tha answer. In 3 words, your vision for women in Pakistan. Like, just 3 words.
Oh, this is a rapid fire.
Yeah, so basically, vision. Can you repeat that?
Like, in 3 words, what is your vision for women in Pakistan? Like, we're coming up and, like, want to do something. Anything that you want to say, like.
Just be courageous, work hard, and raise your voice.
Oh. So who was your biggest supporter when you started this journey, especially with the passport thingy?
I think all my family. I would say that, I'm very close to my sister. And I think that she was immediately like, yes, we'll do this. My husband immediately, not once did he say, no, I don't think I should be the lawyer. Immediately, yes. My family, both sides, my immediate family, my in-laws. I think everyone has been extremely supportive. So overall, I think I've been very lucky, very, very lucky. It's not the case. This is not normal generally. I know many people who fight and are not able to. And so I'm really, really grateful for this.
Yeah.
Okay, lastly, one small reform that you think in the judicial system of Pakistan, that it can be more accessible to women as well. So one small reform that you would like to make.
In any space?
Yeah, in any space.
I think, considering I'm in law, I can, perhaps say more about that. I think it would be important to increase the representation of women in law. So Punjab bar councils, any bar councils, Pakistan and other provincial bar councils really need to step up to ensure increased and mandatory representation of women in law. And then I think coupled with that, the judiciary. So this idea, which I said earlier, we can't even find female judges, we can't find female lawyers that are competent enough to be judges. I think that is just not true. So I think that the judiciary really needs to step up also to have more representation of women. So more women in decision-making powers will make a change.
Okay, so I think this was an interesting but not so rapid round. So you worked on critical reforms such as the passport issue and the Nikkah Nama. So what do you think is the next urgent battle जो हमें औरतों के legal rights के लिए that's your next goal maybe? That what you want to do?
So again, like there are a lot of them, but I think we should start at a younger age. So I would say I would focus a lot more on the youth. In terms of awareness raising and starting in educational institutions. And I would say that, when we empower young girls from a very early age to know about their legal rights, about overall the system, and create this courage for them to pursue any dream, any, occupation that they want to. I think that kind of messaging, motivational as well, is important in the school level. And I feel like in terms of legal reforms, there are way too many. But honestly, within the family law, there are so many legal reforms that are needed in order to empower women to, even, for example, stricter punishments for child marriage. The one, honestly, I can, maybe now that I remember, for child marriage, I think it's very important because this is one law that I have seen that is implemented zero. There is zero implementation of child marriage law in Pakistan, despite the laws existing in all the provinces.
That's alarming.
So I think that there needs to be stricter penalties, harsher punishments, and more serious debate about this issue. And raising the minimum age of marriage from 16 to 18 is also a critical point that I think that needs to be done across the board. So there is uniformity in the legal age of marriage.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Khadija, if you could go back in time and give your younger self some piece of advice before starting this journey and everything, what would it be? I'm very curious to know that.
I would tell myself the same thing, honestly, that I should have more courage and I shouldn't feel that I need to, make everyone happy or I need to, keep it all together. Like, it's okay, there'll be days where you're not going to be achieving the best, but that's normal. This is normal life. And I would tell myself that, I can achieve, I will achieve. And these are the things that I would keep reminding myself. Like I said, honestly, there is this really famous quote. This is my favorite quote, which is C.S. Lewis. And he says, courage, dare hard, courage. That's it.
Okay, so now we're concluding the episode. So lastly, we're going to connect back to the theme of this episode, that is wo jo Pakistan badlenge. So one message that you would like to give to young women in Pakistan.
I think I've said this enough, but I would say the same thing, that don't be afraid. There is so much hope in this country. Like my first thing that I still think about Pakistan, it's a beautiful place. I think there's a lot of hope for this country, but we will make that change happen. And we need to be at the forefront of it. And we do see change happening in different spaces. So I want to give a message of hope to women as well, that it's not all dark and dreary, that there are many women in various fields that are excelling because they took that first step. And then, so just have the courage to take the first step and, use whichever mechanisms that can empower you legally or, just otherwise about your awareness of your rights. Now we have a lot more mediums that are available. I'm sure they're not available to many in rural areas as well. And there are many complications with marginalized groups. But whatever you find, I just want to say that, there is hope. There is always hope. And you should definitely seize all opportunities because you only get to live once.
Yes.
It's one life.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Khadija, for joining us. It was very enlightening from passport to Nikkah Nama. I was shocked, actually. I was like, wow, that's a lot we don't know. So thank you so much for enlightening us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and that's a wrap for Wojo Pakistan Badlengi. Today reminded us that law isn't just written in books. It is lived by women who fight every day.
So to every young woman who is listening to this and watching this, you need to be brave, as Khadija said. You need to be courageous. You need to stand still, and be there for your own rights, right? So until next time, stay bold, stay curious. और कानून इस तरह का होना चाहिए जो सबके लिए accessible हो. That's the message that we would like to give you today. Until next time, this was वो जो पाकिस्तान बदलेंगे. See you soon.
Please like, share and subscribe. To all young women, please like, share and subscribe. And मर्द भी कर ले, like, share, subscribe.